Now, the Diebold system, thanks to, again, Bev Harris and Benny, I really dove deep into it. I basically read the entire manual, okay? As a software developer, you have to know manuals. So I've gone through this manual. I'm not going to bore you with that, but what I'm going to share with you is some very, very important, I want to highlight a couple things. So first of all, if you go read this manual, if you have the chance to read it, I'm not saying you should, but if you do, you'll find out that these software systems do everything. They handle the entire election cycle, from setting up what the ballot should look like, how it should be printed, right? How the data is captured, what kind of race. You can create ballots for a one-on-one race, for one-on-three race, right? You know, three people running, for different kinds of race types, they call it, okay? And so the point is that these systems let you set up the entire, they let you define the election, they have administrative panels, they have the user interface to set up the voting systems, how to print it, all sorts of things, as I'm showing it with these flowcharts, how to finally close out the ballot, how to archive the data, how to audit the process too. They save audit logs of all of this, okay? So all of this is stored in these very interesting systems called election voting systems, all right? What I want to share here with you now is that in these systems, and this is on page 122 in chapter 2, when you're setting up these systems, you can set up a type of race. So remember, it could be two-person race, person A running against person B, and it lets you set up beautiful different options. Now, what you're noticing here is what happened, that's interesting that Benny Smith brings out, is that in the global election system, in the GEMS 1.18.1 release notes, in June of 27, 2001, Diebold introduced a very new type of race. They called it the weighted race. You see? And this is right out of their release notes. It says, add new weighted race. What is a release note, by the way? Whenever new software comes, if you get a new upgrade on your iOS or your Android, if you want to go find, you'll type the release notes. Like, what did we actually add in this new upgrade? So these are the release notes. Look what they did. They added a new feature in these voting systems called the weighted race. Okay? Now, why did they do that? Let me give you some background. Some people, from conjecture and from evidence that we have, and conversations with Bev, at some point, people said, oh, you're doing these voting systems. Maybe we could use these voting systems in homeowners associations. So for example, let's say you lived in a condo unit, okay? Where you have 1,000 people live in a condo unit, okay? I mean, in a condo. And each person has about 1,000 square foot of space, but let's say Dylan has 2,000 square foot of space. And all the 1,000 owners are going to vote on if we should fix up the driveway, right? In the condo unit, or fix up, I don't know, the electrical system. Remember, they pro rata that amount of money that people should spend. So one of the things that was added as a feature was a weighted race. So for example, the person who had 2,000 square feet of space versus the person who had 1,000 could weight their vote. So if Billy Bob had 2,000 square feet and Joan here had 1,000 square feet, when Billy Bob voted yay, he would get 2 votes to his yay, and Joan, if she voted no, would only get 1 vote. So this was done under certain logic that when people own portioning of things, you want to do that. It was called a weighted race. Well, that feature was put in June 27, 01 into the Diebold systems. By the way, Diebold got bought by other companies, and that feature is now in every system, every election system, okay? And if you go read the actual manual, they call it a weighted race. Very interesting, weighted race, okay? And it says weighted races are tallied by weights assigned from the voter registration system and may be counted in the central count vote centers only. So what that means, and they give an example here. So let's say John Doe gets 25 points for his vote. They're using whole numbers. And Jane Doe gets 33. So if they vote yes, it's not 1 and 1. John gets 25 votes, Jane gets 33. So it's 58 votes. And let's say Bill voted no, he only got a weight of 20. It's 20. So it's 58 to 20. Same thing with a different proposition. By the way, the system allows you to set weights for different races, different individuals, and different candidates. Okay? So Shiva Ayyadurai running, the 100 votes I got, you can set the weight to 0.5. and we'll get to that. Dylan, if he's running, he can get 1.5 for every vote he gets. He gets 1.5, and I only get 0.5. So let's just absorb that. So this is in the manual. This is evidence. People can go read this. Now, what Benny Smith discovered, Benny went to high school, very, very modest, very smart guy, very humble guy. Benny said, he went and actually got the software, the GEM software, loaded it up on a server, and he was changing the variables to say, hey, when can I change the race type to the weighted type? And he found out when the setting was 10, the whole user interface, the presentation layer changed, that now the administrator could set a weighted race, okay? Which means candidate A could get weighted down and candidate B could weight it up, okay? So Benny discovered how they did this. And then by a FOIA, they went and got actually an actual vote that took place with the GEMS Diebold system of the Alaska race in the 2004 general elections when John Kerry ran against Bush. And what you see here is in the actual vote count, what do you see here? You see Kerry not got 120,360 votes, but he got 120,360.63 votes. And what did Cheney get? 95,126.02 votes. So that's why this is highlighted. The votes are not stored as integers. The votes are not stored as integers. Why is that? Why are the votes not stored as integers? Because the weighted race option is always turned on. Look at this. It goes, it is unnecessary, this is Benny's conclusion, to embed a weighted race feature into every election system in America, Benny and Bev, to accommodate minor special district elections. Okay? The fractional vote capabilities built into GEMS for all races, whether they're weighted or not. It is embedded in all locations, including states which do not have weighted elections. And it is a default setting for all races everywhere. Okay? Let that absorb in. It's not one person, one vote. It's one person to some decimal vote. This is in every voting system in the United States that does electronic voting. And it gets even, so what happens when a voting system works? You go in, if it's hand done, okay, someone is physically reading it and they're looking at your oval. But if you vote with a machine, it goes through the image. So you take your piece of paper, okay, you circle that ellipse, it goes in, and what the electronic voting machine does, it takes an image, either in some JPEG or TIFF format, it stores that image, okay? The ballot is forgotten. The image, the voting machine then uses optical scanning methods or image processing, and it finds your ellipse and it says, oh, one for Shiva, one for Dylan, another one for Shiva, another one for Dylan. But it's storing not in integers, it is storing in decimals. Why do they need decimals? Going back to the floating point, because if you can multiply by 0.5, you can fractionalize a vote. I hope this is clear. All right. So what did Benny discover? Benny found out that remember the data store at the foundation layer is a simple, stupid Microsoft Access database, and it's not even password protected. So he actually looked in the database structure and voila, what does he find? The total votes, the data type, it's a double. They store the votes as a double fractional decimal. And the reason they're doing that is they can take all my votes and they can multiply it by 0.5 because you need decimals to be able to do fractionals. You can't do it with an integer, as I just told you, right? You need decimals. So the mathematics is set up so your vote, the vote that I get is not a whole number. It's not 1, 2, 3. It could be fractionalized. And you're seeing it right there out of the GEMS voting system, which is everywhere in every voting place. And by the way, so remember, the votes come in the electronic, they're scanned. And it turns out that when fractional voting is turned on, many of these systems delete the image, which by law, you're supposed to save for 22 months. You're supposed to save the image for 22 months. That is a federal law. The ballot images, so forget the paper ballots, because according to federal law, what you use to count is the actual evidence. So if they're deleting the evidence and we can't find it, or if they're altering it by using weighted, then there is no evidence. It's not for me to prove that the evidence, the issue is for them, because remember, evidence is unambiguous prediction. So if we can't even know who voted, and then they can do this kind of multiplication, there is no evidence. It's all ambiguous.